Big Platok welcome Igolong Yupla inside Long Pacific region. Na thank you long join Mipla. I'm Alice Lolohea.
And I'm Johnson Raela. A very warm Pacific welcome to you all. Coming up on the show.
Is Bougainville ready for nationhood? We speak with the region's president about what independence might look like as consultations around a constitution get underway.
And a sneak peek at a new documentary we've been working on around the region's biggest cultural festival.
So nice of you to join me in my backyard.
When we lose our culture, our identity, who are we on this planet?
But first, Pope Francis's 12-day visit across the Asia Pacific is his longest yet since becoming the head of the Catholic Church in 2013. The pontiff was in both Timor-Leste and Papua New Guinea. We take a look at why this was so significant and what it meant to those in our region. Celebration and spirituality. Papua New Guineans were ready to welcome Pope Francis, and the shepherd was just as enthusiastic to greet his flock. The pontiff's visit has proved a unifying force amidst growing political and economic turmoil in the country. It's not the first time a pontiff has been to PNG. Pope John Paul II visited twice. But this Asia-Pacific tour is a first for Pope Francis, and it's a grueling schedule for the now 87-year-old. Still, the visit has been touted as a mission of peace. While in PNG, the Pope urged the responsible use of the country's vast natural resources.
These goods are destined by God for the entire community.
He also called for an end to tribal warfare and urged the church to be closer to its women, particularly women accused of witchcraft, marginalised and rejected by their families. But it was Papua's youth who asked the more poignant questions during his trip.
I would like to ask you, Holy Father, how we can make our world more beautiful and happy, even if we live in abandonment and poverty.
Through studying and putting our best effort into every opportunity we are given to grow, improve and refine our gifts and skills.
From PNG,
Bye-bye.
he made his way to Timor-Leste and received a rock-star welcome. Timor-Leste, the most Catholic nation on earth outside the Vatican, counts 96% of the population amongst the faithful. Brought through Dutch and Portuguese traders, Catholicism took hold during Indonesia's occupation when the Church advocated for Timorese human rights. Then, Pope John Paul II brought their independence struggle to the international stage during his visit in the 80s.
Many innocent people have died.
Since then, the country's reverence has been evident in its preparations. Even Prime Minister Xanana Gusmao was sweeping the streets. But the Pope's visit has not been without controversy. While around 600,000 Timorese celebrated Mass with the Holy Father here at Tasitolu, weeks earlier the Tasitolu community didn't receive blessings, but bulldozers. Their homes demolished as part of preparations for the Holy See.
I'm very sad. They give us such short notice and now they've come in and destroyed our homes.
Our children are still at school in this area. We've asked them to create a place for us, but we have nowhere to go.
With nearly half the population living in poverty, the visit's estimated to cost the young nation close to 18 million Australian dollars. But for a majority of Timorese, the pontiff's rare visit demonstrates his ability to help people transcend their daily struggles.
For us, the Pope is a reflection of the Lord Jesus as a shepherd who wants to see his sheep, so we come to him with all our hearts as our worship.
So, as we mentioned, Pope Francis spoke out on a number of key issues, and he did mention the Church's handling of historic sexual abuse cases. But many survivors say he didn't go far enough. We'll have more on that later. When he was in PNG, though, the Pope urged leaders to progress discussions over the future of the autonomous region of Bougainville, saying the rekindling of ancient tensions must be avoided. Bougainville voted overwhelmingly to secede from PNG in 2019, but since then, PNG's government has dragged its feet, missing last year's deadline to vote on ratifying the non-binding referendum result. This week, former New Zealand Governor-General Sir Jerry Mateparae was appointed to moderate negotiations between the two parties, a move welcomed by both sides. But how do you make a new country? And what issues are playing on the minds of Bougainville's people? Our reporter Hilda Wayne and producer Gabriella Marchant met with Bougainville's president and citizens to find out.
1,000 kilometers northeast of Port Moresby, Bougainville is on a quest to become the world's newest democracy.
Are people feeling confident about achieving independence soon? Yes, people of Bougainville are confident. They are in fact overconfident.
The region is home to the lucrative Panguna copper mine, shut down in the 80s after violence erupted over who was profiting from its riches. Up to 20,000 people died in a conflict between Bougainville separatists and PNG. The war ended with a peace deal in 2001.
The Bougainville War is officially over.
It gave the region greater autonomy and paved the way for a non-binding referendum to leave PNG, which was passed overwhelmingly.
People were voting freely, and the result was 97.7%. So that's a testimony of what the people of Bougainville want for the future of Bougainville.
But 5 years on, PNG is still yet to consider ratifying the results in Parliament, with many pointing to natural resources that would leave PNG with Bougainville and the precedent it could set for other resource-rich provinces as reasons for the delay.
And I have some issue that I must deal with. A question posed to us by certain provinces of autonomy.
In Bougainville's capital, Buka, everyday people have their concerns too.
Mi playa ti hard work, working sila business. Ti plus struggle.
Mechanic Joseph Rangish Sukuliana wants more detail on how the economy would benefit him. After years of instability, Bougainville's development has been sluggish. Just 10% of residents have access to electricity.
How mi playa bain taki si ko logaman na gaman ni no luksabe lo mi playa olo.
As a sovereign nation, massive foreign investment would be needed to kickstart the economy. Some question whether its institutions are ready to manage the funds involved, as well as the environmental impact of future mining after years of degradation since Rio Tinto shut its operations at Panguna. But locals still say they want control.
People are confident because the leaders are voted freely by the people of Bougainville, and they are the people they want to serve them.
For months, officials have been consulting citizens on a draft constitution for the nation they hope to form. I've come to Brisbane, where Bougainville's Australian diaspora have gathered to meet with those officials and Bougainville's president, Ishmael Toroama. Anita Sales has come as part of Bougainville's delegation.
We go out with a series of questions, and those questions basically are about what it takes to be a country.
She says women have a big part to play.
Bougainville is a matrilineal society. It is very important that women take some center stage. We have women as presidents of our community governments, owners of land, businesses, big supermarkets. Because of the hardship of the crisis, women have really risen up.
Anita says economic issues are a big reason so many Bougainvillians want to run their own affairs.
One of the biggest revenue source that we are looking at is in the tuna industry, but currently PNG is not really becoming a willing partner.
Now you are in Brisbane. Is it important that Bougainville elites who are around the world, in Australia and around the world, contribute?
Yes, I believe it is very important for Bougainvillian elite to contribute.
Yes, good to see you.
Nearly Tinga is a Bougainvillean living in Melbourne who's doing just that. She wrote to Bougainville's president inviting him to Australia. To her surprise, he wrote back.
Our views are so different from our people because we are exposed to seeing things from the outset, looking in. You don't have to be in PNG or Bougainville to be able to achieve something like this. Even though we live abroad, Bougainville is still home. I want to see the young ones go back because the skills, we need the skills in order to get Bougainville forward. And that expertise, because we speak a different language. You know, being Bougainvilleans working abroad, when you go back, you can still relate to your own people. I personally would like to see, you know, the government create a way or a pathway for Bougainvilleans that are living abroad to contribute in their field of expertise.
Mary Jane Paro is one of those young people who've managed an education abroad. And hearing her speak is a potent reminder of the intergenerational ties to her country's history and its future.
Fortunately, my parents, before the crisis hit, my dad was in Rabaul and my mom came to Australia to go do her grade 11 and 12. So she had the opportunity to come out, but her parents, her siblings, the rest. Why am I getting? I didn't know I was going to be emotional.
That's okay. It's an emotional journey for all of you here.
Yes, my mom's parents, they were impacted. They had to be like, so they had to be like in the jungles hiding and all that with the rest of my mom's siblings. With my dad, he was the lucky one. He was in Rabaul, but not so lucky because when you're in PNG, and things like this are happening back in your home, they experience things, but even though they're outside of Bougainville, just being from Bougainville, from Papua New Guinea. My dad was able to go back and see his mom, but for his dad, he passed away, yes. But for my mom's parents, they made it through the crisis. I'm lucky, but the generational trauma.
Bougainville becomes independent. You are the future of Bougainville. How do you hope to contribute and give back to your country?
I just hope that whatever our president is deciding on, like they build good infrastructures and industries that we can go back and give back. Bougainville has a long way to go, but if we have the right people in place, anything can happen.
President Ishmael Toroama believes he is the person who can take Bougainville all the way. Originally a soldier in the Bougainville Revolutionary Army, he was elected just after the referendum to finish the job he started as a young man. Facing a complex balancing act as negotiations with PNG over the region's future continue, he agreed to sit down with me in Brisbane to discuss the road ahead. Thank you so much, President Rama, for meeting with us today.
It's wonderful to be here.
Now, President Rama, Bougainville people have voted overwhelmingly to gain independence. Now there's sort of a bump along the way to that, and that is the ratification in the PNG Parliament. What has it been like from your meeting and discussions with the PNG leaders?
There's no ending part of it. Every process keeps evolving. Every agreement keeps evolving. If I pose a question to myself, I'll be asking, who is responsible for the whole mess? More than 15 to 20,000 lives have been lost. So you have to give back to Bougainville. Depriving the rights of the people within that context is really shameful. If the Parliament has contributed, the Parliament must now endorse the 97.7. We have done all that we can do. I am saying this confidently because I think it's likely to happen. Bougainville will never float away from East New Britain and New Ireland. No, we'll be there. It's all about getting us into another new relationship. If you cannot give Bougainville its freedom, you are doomed.
Bougainvilleans and yourself, your people are at this crossroads where it all is in the hands of the PNG Parliament. In the event that they do not vote for full independence for Bougainville, is there a risk of the possibility of going back into crisis again?
We have fought enough. I think we must move to a higher level into trying to managing whatever that could be seen as going back, not really going to war. But if the political agenda for the people, it's about people revolting. It's not about my leadership saying, no, you cannot do that, we cannot do that, no. It's the sentiments of the people. If it sits properly within that space, I think they will accept. But if it does not fit well into that space, then you will see people will revolt.
Bougainville copper mine has been at the center of this whole, the crisis and what Bougainville is going through now. And it has also contributed in a very big way to help launch PNG's economy as well. Is that something that your government will look to boost its economy?
Panguna mine is one of those activities to safeguard or to materialize independence, because it has bankrolled PNG's economy, as well as Australia. Just by looking at it, it's how smart we can be to ensure that we can economically safeguard our people and invite investors coming in. We have these political aspirations there. It's a question of how I can economically empower the 97.7 and make sure it comes alive. Otherwise, we'll be just another banana republic. We have to control what is ours through the constitutional making process so that we can be entitled and entrusted to look after what is ours. And then we can open doors for credible investors. In Melanesian context, when you give a pig to me, I must slaughter the pig and give it to you. It's not the other way around, no. I want to control what is within Bougainville.
And speaking of the Bougainville copper mine, one of the issues that came up is because of the damages that it has done, the pollution and so forth.
We have the Australian government, we have its subsidiary arm, Rio Tinto, we have the government of Papua New Guinea. I think they are responsible. Looking back into legacy issues, what I wanted to see is, you come together, and if you want to talk about Bougainville, why not you empower Bougainville?
President Ishmael Toroama, thank you so much for your time with us in the ABC, and it's been an honor to talk to you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
While the Pope's Pacific visit has brought joy and hope to millions of faithful, it's also been seen as an opportunity to highlight church failings in dealing with priests accused of sexual abuse. The New York Times has published a report detailing how more than 30 priests accused of abuse were transferred to Pacific nations in recent decades. 10 were moved to Papua New Guinea. Using court records, government inquiries, survivor testimonies, news media reports and comments by church officials, the Times revealed church superiors knew on at least 13 of these occasions that priests had been convicted of or accused of sexual abuse. It's the first time the scale and seriousness of the issue in the Pacific has been revealed. From Aotearoa, New Zealand, I'm joined by the report's author, Peter McKenzie, who travelled to the region, meeting with church leaders and survivors. Malo, and welcome to the Pacific.
Kia ora. Thanks for having me.
Firstly, it's been widely documented that the church has protected accused priests by shuffling them to other places. But what makes the cases in the Pacific different?
As you say, it's been widely documented that the church has shuffled priests around the world. But this is the first time that that pattern has been documented in the Pacific Islands. And it's particularly significant for the Pacific for two reasons. One, as we know, the Pacific is one of the most Christian places in the world. People here are so devout and so tuned into their church that it takes on much more significance. And secondly, the Pacific is, by global standards, extremely devout. And so shuffling priests here means that they're shielded from any, if much scrutiny.
Is there a pattern of a cover-up by the church here?
I can't speak to the church's mindset, but we can see a clear pattern of priests and missionaries moving to the Pacific after allegedly, or we know, committing abuse elsewhere. And in at least 13 cases, church officials knew that those priests and missionaries had been convicted or accused of abuse before they moved. So there was definitely church knowledge in a really significant number of these cases.
The church is hugely important in Pacific communities. Are attitudes towards sexual abuse in the church different in the Pacific compared to, say, Australia or New Zealand?
Yeah, well, in the Pacific, sex and sexual abuse is extremely taboo. And so to then combine that with, the huge affection and the huge loyalty to the church, and you have a really potent mix, that means there's extreme pressure on survivors in the Pacific not to come forward. That's true in New Zealand, that's true in Australia, but definitely not to the same extent. It's a whole different level in the Pacific Islands.
Peter, how have Pacific leaders or church groups responded to these allegations, or if at all?
Well, I was lucky enough to speak with the Archbishop of Suva, Peter Lloyd Chong, while I was reporting this piece. And Archbishop Chong was very clear that he has no records of abusive priests being moved to his diocese or other dioceses. That's not surprising. In many of these cases, local church officials weren't told by their partners in New Zealand, in Australia, in the rest of the world. But it was interesting talking to Archbishop Chong. Even he said that, and I am roughly quoting, the word that's going round is that instead of dealing with the problem at home, those men were sent overseas. So even among local church officials in the Pacific, there is some level of awareness that that is an approach.
Support groups you spoke to in your article plan to press the Pope on these issues in PNG. Do you know how these discussions went?
Yeah, so SNAP, the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests, which is a kind of global organisation with branches all around the world, they've written to the Pope, they've issued public declarations, public requests, but it's hard for them. They've got a branch in Australia, they've got a branch in New Zealand, they've got a branch in Fiji. I spoke to the survivor who represents that branch. But again, because this is such a taboo topic, because the pressure on survivors in the Pacific is so extreme, they've had real difficulty establishing branches in places like Papua New Guinea, in places like Timor-Leste, which is where the Pope is travelling. So again, we see that culture of taboo, that culture of pressure having an impact.
Finally, from those you did speak with, what resolution do they want?
Well, in the conversations that I had with survivors and with advocates, they don't want just another apology. They say that would be great, but they want a really clear admission by the church of harm. And they want the church to proactively find that harm, to go out and approach survivors, approach potential survivors, and see where they can help, as opposed to letting people come to them. Because the latter, letting people approach them, it is difficult in the Pacific. So they want a more proactive approach by the church in reckoning with this legacy.
Peter, that's all we have time for. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Let's change tack now and onto something we're so excited to share with everyone.
Yeah, our team's been on the grind behind the scenes, putting together a new film which we shot in Hawaii on the Festival of Pacific Arts, which is the biggest celebration of Pacific culture on the planet.
But it's about much more than just the festival itself. It's called Canvas of Oceans, and here's a little sneak peek.
Too often, around the world, they look at us as small island states. We are not small island states. We are the caretakers of the largest ocean in the world.
This is the next chapter in a story that started thousands of years ago on great voyages across the Pacific.
where the rest of the world could not dare to do so.
On our islands, our homes, the markings on our skin, and ancient art, sound, and dance. Against rising tides, against invasions and nuclear destruction, Pacific people have endured.
We still have our culture. We still have our language. We're still here. We are still here.
As thousands descend on Hawaii for the 13th Festival of Pacific Arts, we met with creators and other custodians of Pacific culture.
We're all taking each other's phone numbers, and I think babies are going to become born.
When we lose our culture, our identity, who are we on this planet?
I will always be a Hawaiian, and I will die as a Hawaiian.
It makes me feel so alive.
So nice of you to join me in my backyard.
I'm Johnson Raela.
I didn't realise this journey would be this emotional. And I'm Alice Lolohea, and this is a story about more than just a gathering.
Well, there you have it. As you can see, there are lots of tears, but also so many great stories from people preserving Pacific arts and culture. But it wasn't just us. We'd like to make a special mention to our backseat passengers, our camera crew, Gabriella Marchant and Sean Manteso, for your hard mahi on this deeply personal project. Thanks for joining us on this Pacific cultural journey. Canvas of Oceans, it airs on September 15th on ABC Australia. Check out the TV schedule online for the broadcast time in your country, or if you're watching us after the 15th, you can see it on ABC iView and on YouTube. Ahui ho! See you next week.